What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner, 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I also co-host and co-produce the only online show in the world for dads and fathers. It's sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. And in 2022 and 2021, our team, in regards to the broadcast, reached out directly and indirectly to over 100,000 fathers around the world, directly and indirectly. So through podcasts, website, webinars, etc. So I always find that very humble to have that privilege and opportunity. And as always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And we're broadcasting live on the 29th of January. Yeah, 29th of January. The month is like gone. And as I was telling people the other day, I feel like it's like June until like this week we got snow again. I said snow again, like we hardly get snow these days, but we got some more snow. So I do realize we're still in January. So on Sunday afternoons at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, we do a conversation called Black Canada Talking. It's a live online event that provides Black Canadians the opportunity to give their takes and POVs on stories that are of importance to them. So people who even know me a little bit, I love bringing new friends on Black Canada Talking or anything Dr. Vibe does. And we have two new friends today. And before we went live, I said, I could read their bios, but I said, you know what? Let me bring them and let them talk for themselves, because I have enough challenges talking for myself, and they've done so many wonderful things that I want them to share them with you. So we have Dr. Helen Ofosu, and we have Kafui Sawyer. How are you today?
Pretty good, despite all the snow we have in Ottawa.
Yeah, well, yeah, the Ottawa thing, yeah, like I shuffled yesterday, then got up this one, had to shovel again, went out this morning, came back, had to shovel again. That's too much. That's enough. Hold it. Stop your noise, enough said. Done deal. So I'd like to say thank you for coming in virtually from Ottawa. I appreciate not taking for granted. And Dr. Ofosu, we've been going back and forth for this conversation for a while, so it's finally here. So I appreciate both of you, and you brought such wonderful company. Ms. Sawyer was asking questions about my background, this and that. I'm going, man, is she a government worker? Someone got all this investigation going on? Like, I know you live in Ottawa, but man, don't make me feel like you live in Ottawa with all this government thing going on. But joking aside, no, very happy to have both of you here today. So what we like to do, especially with first-time friends on the platform, is to share a little bit about yourself. So Dr. Ofosu, if you can share a little bit about your audience, yourself with the audience, we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me back. I always like to start with my background. I have a Jamaican mother and a father from Ghana, so I feel like I straddle both places. Professionally, I am a work and business psychologist. So I've been doing things involved with recruitment and hiring and career development for many years. Like over 20 years actually. But in 2012, I started my own practice. And since then, I've been offering executive coaching, career coaching, and plenty of HR stuff. So still helping organizations with hiring and solving certain sensitive HR-related problems.
Excellent. Ms. Sawyer?
Yeah, thank you for having me on the show, Dr. Vibe. My name is Kafui, and I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I have 3 children. I don't think they're children anymore, but they're big teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
I am a registered psychotherapist, and I work as a trauma consultant for Health Canada.
Wow.
I have been in this field for 15 years, and I enjoy the field of counseling. I enjoy psychotherapy. I also enjoy the work I do in my community, especially in my church. I do have a very structured faith based spirituality, which allows me to stay on track and to keep me accountable in my work in my personal life and in my relationship with other people. So thank you. I probably should also mention this. I'm also the chair of the Black Psychology section of the Canadian Psychological Association.
Yes.
Not to mention that. So
yes.
yeah.
Well, when both of you sent me your bios, the first thing that came up in my mind is, do you sleep? Like, when do each of you sleep?
I don't know if you want to go with this, Helen, but yeah, I do sleep.
I'm not saying anything.
I do sleep, and sometimes, my sleep is sometimes restless, depending on where I am in my life. But most of the time, I would say 90% of the time, sleep is very important to me. Sleep is recovery, and
Right.
so if I don't sleep, I'm not recovered.
One other question or conversation piece I'd like to ask you or have you respond to before we get into our main conversation topics is, why did you get into the field that you're in, and how have you been able to stay in it so long? Because it's not easy stuff.
You first, Kafui?
Okay.
Hold on, Helen. What's going on here? You're deflecting to her. What's going on here?
I know what's going on. So I am a clinician,
Okay.
and Helen is a business psychologist. So
Business and work. Yeah. And it's funny because the two are so interrelated. I mean, every single week I am calling either Kafui or another psychotherapist or a clinical psychologist asking if they can squeeze in one more person for me. Because so many things that are happening at work are causing turmoil and problems and preventing people from showing up the way they should at work. So I'm grateful to have all my clinician colleagues, that's for sure. But that's not what you asked. What did you ask?
No, it wasn't. You're deflecting again. What got you into this?
To be honest, I'm a little bit of an accidental psychologist. I remember when I was in undergrad, I was taking a general first year because I wasn't sure what I wanted to study. And I was looking for an elective, and one of my childhood friends, somebody who I had been at summer camp with and we worked together as counselors, said to him, Tom, what's a good elective? And he said, you should take psychology. It'll open doors for you. And I did, and I loved it. So I ended up having a BSc in psychology because I didn't want to waste a year's worth of science courses. So it was easier to take psychology using science as my base. So that's how it started.
Is that colleague still alive today, and do you keep in touch with them?
Oh yeah, I'm still in touch with him, and he's still shocked that incidental conversation we had on the quad at McMaster led to all of this, because it did. Yeah.
Wow. Fantastic. Kafui, how did you enter the journey?
Yeah, so I entered the journey, I would say, through my own personal experience. I wanted to be a pharmacist growing up. And so when I started taking some science courses at the University of Ottawa, I ended up getting quite sick. I became quite ill. I had some health issues, and so that impacted my performance in science. I ended up going to see a career psychologist. It was the best psychologist I ever saw in my life at that time. And that psychologist redirected my life. And I became cognizant of the fact that I didn't want to be behind the counter. I didn't want to produce drugs or, make them up or deal with drugs or medications. I think I just wanted to talk with people and get to help them and engage with them. And so I think that process of connecting with a career psychologist at the University of Ottawa was a turning point for me. I saw the kind of work he did, and I'm like, wow, if you can get me in the right profession and make sure that I'm taking the correct courses or the right courses for my own professional development, this is amazing. And I can only imagine what I can do in the life of other people as well, or especially, young teenagers who have just started school and feeling lost in whatever they are called to do in university, and going here, going there. But I just landed in psychology as a way of redirecting me from science.
It's so interesting, Kafui, how you've turned your lived experience into your journey.
That's true.
That's fantastic. Well, time will go by fast, so let's get into our conversation topics today. And the first topic that both of you wanted to chat about, and we could spend the next 3 Sundays going at this one. So let's just start the conversation in regards to workplace challenges and Black mental health. Where do you want to start the conversation? I could start it, but it's you're driving the ship today. I'm steering it. Where do you want to start the conversation on this wonderful and interesting subject?
Well, I'll start this one. And I mean, I know for myself, work has always been a complicated thing. I mean, of course, it's where you make your living and all the rest of it. But it seems that as time has passed, the workplace has become more and more complicated and really hard, even for successful people. Because when I started out, and certainly when I was growing up, people who had a degree, especially a degree in a kind of a lucrative area or a popular area, they were pretty much guaranteed success. But now there are a lot of people who have good foundations. They may have advanced degrees, they may have good work experience, and it's still not a smooth ride. And I also appreciate how hectic life can get. So it's sometimes, that extra layer of challenge to figure out how to solve certain problems that you're facing at work without a whole lot of time. And often when things are not going well, you just don't have the energy that you would normally have to attack certain problems. And honestly, that's a big part of what led me to write my book. And in fact, kind of tying into what Kafui said about, this whole career psychologist and how things like that can make a big difference in our lives. I mean, I'm just glad that both of us are here to talk about the issues. I mean, there's so much to unpack,
Yeah. And just to add to what Helen just mentioned, I think we spend so much time in a workplace. And I think most people would say they spend about at least 7 hours at the work, at their workplaces. And I don't think we even spend 7 hours with our family members every day, as much as we do at work. So we grow, we develop, we learn in our workplaces. And so the workplace is a defining factor as to who you become really in life. Your mind, your soul, your spirit is embedded in the workplace. And I think it's a critical element of who you become, because if you're spending 7 hours, 5 days a week in a workplace, then that should do something to you. That impacts your life. It impacts who you become, who you talk to, your relationships. It's huge.
So great foundational start for the conversation. Now I'm going to add a little pepper sauce onto it. Now let's talk about what you just said from a melanated lens.
Well, let's face it. There are certain problems that are universal, right? There are a lot of challenges that anyone can face at work. But then if we are melanated, we can add that extra layer of anti-Black racism. And it makes things really complicated, really hard. And I think one thing that often gets lost is that when you're having work-related problems, those problems are also linked to your livelihood. In other domains, if we don't like something, we can just leave without having financial consequences. But depending on what's happening, it may be hard to leave. And quite often we don't want to leave until we have the next thing lined up, because not everyone has months and months of income or savings to tide them over, not knowing how long it'll take to get from where you are to your next position. So, even when things are going poorly, it's not always easy to just say, I'm out. Sometimes it takes a lot more effort.
I also think that being Black in a workplace is, in our culture or in our Western culture, I can speak to Canadian culture. I think for Black people, they usually find themselves as visible minorities in the workplace, and so you become quite sensitive to the environment in which you work in, because you're more noticeable. You know, you're not working with a lot of people who look like you, right? And so it can be, you become quite sensitive in your dealings with people. I think that's the feedback I hear from my colleagues who work in workplaces that are highly dominated by white people. And so I think, whether you like it or not, color is important, and we do see color. And so you can tell when someone is a visible minority in that workplace. And so I think for Black people, we become very attuned to our presence in a workplace, and so that also creates a level of, I would, some sort of anxiety or sensitivity, and that can impact when things are not going well in that same workplace. Yeah.
And
Oh,
I would say that
go on.
I would say that sometimes the sensitivity is not coming from us. It's a response to what's happening to us. Right? When you work in a place and you're bringing your A game every day, you're performing, you're delivering, sometimes you're over delivering, outshining your competition, your colleagues. But when you're doing that consistently and you're still being overlooked for opportunities, you're often underemployed, you're not earning as much as you should, you're dealing with microaggressions or worse, sometimes you're the scapegoat. It is a lot, and it is awful.
Like I said, I wish we have weeks talking about this, and I'm speaking already that you're going to come back and keep us updated along this journey. But I think also another challenging part, two other ones I'm just thinking about now, a lot of times when you have those challenges in the workplace, a lot of times there's not melanated individuals that you can go to hear your concerns, who can maybe better understand, because they can maybe understand that lens a little better than our non-melanated colleagues in the workplace.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's changing bit by bit, because now there are more organizations that are supporting racialized and especially Black employees in workplaces, employee resource groups. In the federal public service, there's the Federal Black Employee Caucus. There's a group of Black executives that seem to be quite cohesive. So these things are changing in some domains, but there are a lot of workplaces where there aren't enough to even have a group, right? Sometimes you're isolated.
And I think the isolation causes, feelings of I want to be careful around this, but I think I'm just going to speak to it. I think it creates feelings of fear. Because when you're isolated, you're not feeling supported. Like, people who feel supported don't say they're isolated. And so if you are alone as a Black person in your workplace, you will feel isolated, and that increases some level of fear. I've always wondered, whether sometimes the hiring system is actually done intentionally to keep Black people limited in terms of their numbers. So there's always that feeling that I get, that it's almost like a dab of Black in that workplace. And so it decreases the confidence and the strength of that person, because numbers do matter. And if you have more Black people in a workplace, they will feel stronger. Our support systems are so important. We cannot negate that. And so if you are alone in your workplace as a Black person, or you have very few of you, it causes a sense of isolation and some level of fear or concern as to what is expected of me. And so I think that piece of how the kind of people we hire in our workplaces needs to be done strategically, so that we are not making people feel isolated. I do agree with Helen that the systems are changing. They're trying to move away. So since the killing of George Floyd, our organizations are looking at this very differently, and we want to feel supported. And so I do know my college, my regulatory college, has actually designed a diversity and equity inclusion group, an advisory group to actually advise the council on matters relating to race, matters relating to equity, matters relating to inclusion and belonging. Let's not forget that piece. The belonging piece is important, because we can talk the talk about we're doing this and doing that, but do people feel like they belong in that community or in that organization? Now that's another conversation to have.
Yes, and I'm going to get to it a little bit in just a moment. Alice Weaf says, greetings, everyone. So greetings, Alice. Thank you for watching the conversation. You are reading my alleged mind, Kafui, because I want to talk a little bit about the whole initiative of equity, diversity, and inclusion that's been on like the buzz over the last few years, that got a little bit accelerated because of the death of George Floyd. Are either one of you wanting to give your view of how that is working out high level over the last few years?
Well, I have some observations.
Sure.
I think it made some progress. I think a lot of these initiatives have made some progress. I think a lot of organizations have, their cultures have improved a little bit in terms of some more inclusion, some more belonging, particularly for Black employees. But we have a long way to go. And one observation that I've had is that so many of the people who are doing this work, I'm not talking about the white ones who do this work, because for them, it's a very different reality. But for the Black ones who do this work, I think it's such hard work. And over time, I've talked to some of them who've said, this is really important work, but it is grueling and it's kind of hurting me.
Wow.
Because these are the people who are also confronting a lot of the pushback. They're sometimes facing some reprisal. They're not necessarily well supported in terms of reporting relationships or budgets. And so one thing that crossed my mind is that we have all these basically lay people, experts in EDI, but they are hearing very traumatizing things, and they themselves are being traumatized by their work. And I've noticed that in clinical psychology, in psychotherapy, a lot of the mental health professionals, they get together regularly as these consultation groups, and they support each other. And so if professionals in mental health are finding ways to support each other, quite often with facilitated expertise, and they still find it hard, how is it that we have people doing this EDI work with no real support? Because I don't think that they should be spending their time with their own private therapists to deal with problems that are being created and maintained by work. I would love to see us get to a point where the folks who are doing this work get better support through their employer because of the occupational hazard.
That's a really good point, Helen. That really speaks to the respect and dignity of a person, because most of the people getting involved in the EDI work are passionate people, who are Black, Indigenous, and racialized. They are the ones who really want to do this work. I don't want to minimize the work of our white allies as well, because they usually help push this movement, forward, because they're in positions of power and can move it in the direction where it will be very supported by, Blacks, Indigenous, and racialized people. So I think, Helen, you raised a really good point there. But we also need to be cognizant of the fact that the people doing this work are those who have this lived experience. They are speaking to the heart of the matter. So emotionally, they're going to be more exhausted, more tired This is going to impact their well-being in their relationship with their families. In my home, we talk about race all the time. We talk about our struggles. We talk about the challenges. Not too long ago, I was just talking to Helen yesterday about even our hair and the stress involved in our hair, and all the things. We just don't get up, and just go. We have to do our hair. Our hair is a different style. It takes time to do this hair. And so little things like this that most white people don't have to deal with. We have to deal with that with our children. We have to deal with it in our families. And so when people come into EDI work with families that they serve and provide for, I don't think we should be compensating them on the same level as white people. Absolutely not. It's an added layer of emotional stress and exhaustion. So if you are compensating, say, a white person to do some of the work in EDI, and you're thinking you're going to put them on the same level as a black person, that is not right. That is not justice. That is actually not right at all. We shouldn't be compensated on the same level. Our struggles are not the same. We came into this part of the world as families of slaves, building Canada, and so we're not coming in with a lot of heritage in that positive framework of money. We're coming in with a lot of loss, a lot of hurt, a lot of harm, a lot of trauma. So we cannot share the same compensation. Absolutely not.
Bring it, Kafui. Bring it. I bring it. You're raising the bar. You're raising the bar. I love it. Love it. Love it. So how has, from both your lenses, the workplace changed for Black Canadians pre-pandemic, during pandemic, post-pandemic?
I gotta say that during the George Floyd, that whole time, that all those social justice protests, I was so glad I wasn't part of the regular workplace. I was working from home, but I was also self-employed. Many people during the pandemic, especially, during the height of the conversations around George Floyd, they were admitting that they were super grateful to be away from the physical workplace. They knew that had they been in regular communication face-to-face with their colleagues, everyone would be looking to them for all the solutions. And they also recognized that by being at home, all of a sudden, they could usually just do their work. They didn't have to worry about the same level of vigilance and self-protection that they had to deal with when they were in the physical workplace. And I didn't notice it at first, but I think one of the reasons I've been so happy as a self-employed person is that as a rule, the people I interact with, they kind of like me and they respect me. So I'm treated okay. And that changes a lot. So yes, there have been improvements post George Floyd. In fact, I'd say pretty radical improvements in terms of what the workplace was like when I left it 10 years ago. But we still have a long way to go. There's still a lot of harm being created, and there's still a lot of inequity in terms of opportunity and income.
I think the workplace has also created, since George Floyd's killing, I think most people, I want to believe most people have become sensitive to, the struggles of Blacks, Indigenous, and racialized people. And so people who used to say they never saw color now see color. And so I think people are becoming more capable of working with Black people. I see that in my organization. I see that in my relationship with others. People are becoming good listeners. That's my perspective. They're becoming good listeners. And they're not taking more of a defense. Of course, I'm sure some of my colleagues would say, oh yeah, they still see defensive people. But in my personal experience, I'm seeing a shift away from, that this never happens to, yes, this happens. Let's do something about it. And so part of what we have been doing, Helen and I have been so involved in advocacy work. We were able to join with other colleagues to start a group called the Black, Indigenous, and Racialized People Psychology Web.
Nice.
And we have about 83 members in this I should say, group organization. It's wonderful, and to see the allyship from our white colleagues as well. It's just amazing to see that we are actually addressing and talking about the problems that have always been there, but it looks like George Floyd's killing brought this up to the surface and allowed us to have some meaningful conversations. In light of that, I also want to attest to the fact that we ended up launching our Black Psychology section of the Canadian Psychological Association, and it was a step in the right direction. And I think prior to that, those of us who have been members of this organization, the CPA, for a very long time, we didn't know where we sat or where we fit in the organization. And since the Black Psychology section, I think we have become more open to understanding that, you know what, we can do some good work together. We can help people. We can change the direction of the ways we've been dealing with things and get people to come together to work on serious problems, important problems in the community. And so I think I'm seeing a shift in the movement. We have other sections that are doing great work. Counseling psychology has always been a social justice, I would say, section of our organization. Community psychology, the section of women and psychology. Mm-hmm. We have a traumatic stress section. Like, people are coming together. Educational psychology. We're becoming more collaborative in our dealings and not ignoring the issues that are very important to all Canadians.
Nice. Anything you'd like to add, Helen, at all?
No, I agree. Both of these groups have been tremendous. And in addition to the advocacy work, because both groups are national, it's creating a community for people who were otherwise somewhat isolated. Because there aren't a lot of psychologists who are Black or racialized across the country. So usually there may be one or two in every organization. So having these two organizations, it's basically creating community, and it's creating some social support and professional support and networking.
That's a huge win.
Yeah.
That is a huge win. I'm really happy to hear about that. And actually, can you talk, either one of you, how the Black Psychology section of the Canadian Psychological Association got started? How did it come into being?
Started with this woman right here.
And she's got a lot of secret sauce going on, family. When it came on, she's so quiet, and I go, "What? You're good fire."
I've always been on fire.
Share the story, because before we came on live, she asked, "How did you get the name Dr. Vibe?" No. So now we want to hear how this came about.
Oh, that's a really, really good question. So I have known Helen for over 24 years, I think, at this point in my life. And wonderful people I came across in terms of, trying to get this movement going. I think part of my drive was I was getting bored in the association that I belonged to, and I was trying to figure out what was going on here. And I was seeing the same thing over and over again. I know my association was trying to move in a positive direction. But you see, you can't move in a positive direction when you don't have the lived experienced people in the committees and the groups. You need to hear the voices of the people you're trying to support and to impact. And so I think, I thought for myself it was about time to get something going in a way that was going to serve most Black people in the psychology profession, in the psychotherapy profession, and to help us moving forward in a way that's going to serve, our people. And so, to be honest, I got in touch with wonderful people like Dr. Anita Shaw, who is actually a white person. She's a white woman who is also, committed to this social advocacy work, in getting all voices at the table. Got in touch with Helen, my friend. Got in touch with Dr. Monica Williams. Got in touch with Dr. Erin Beadham from Montreal. Like, we're all over the place in terms of who we are as people, and got in touch with some of my past professors who mentored me, and Dr. Vibe. To be honest with you, the people who mentored me are white people, and they're white, strong people involved in advocacy work. So as I sit here today, I mentioned these names. I have a lot of respect for Dr. Marvin McDonald from Trinity Western University, who actually instilled in me the passion to get this going, as well as Dr. Rob Lees. These are wonderful people who are white, Dr. Vibe. And we're also talking about Dr. Manuel Rima. I remember calling Dr. Rima from Wilfrid Laurier and saying, you know what, Manuel? You do community work. I need you to help us move this in the right direction. And he just said, count me in. Count me in, Dr. Vibe. So you can tell that the heart has always been there. People have always wanted to see something positive move in this direction. But I think, for it to move in that direction, we had to stand up. The Black people had to stand up. Yeah. We can't ask white people to do our work for us. We had to stand up, because it was meaningful to us. And so we also needed the support of these white allies who actually are in power and can help us move in that direction. And so I think it was the joy of bringing everybody together and getting people to say, yes, I want to do this work.
Helen, anything you want to add?
No, that's a very good characterization. I mean, it was literally 3 Black psychologists and 2 allies who got this section launched. And, we've been lucky. I mean, I'm sure both of us over our careers, we've had allies who've been supportive, because there aren't that many Black or racialized people in either one of our fields.
Okay. You know what?
And if I can just add something to this.
You're on fire. I ain't stopping you.
I need to say this. I need to say this, Dr. Vibe, because if I could add something to this, I think one of the major impact for me in moving this forward was looking at other professors like Dr. Jude Stanat-Marie from the University of Ottawa, and his passion for Black people in terms of mental health and wanting to change the direction. I still remember having a conversation with him, and he says, you know what? Let's bring these people on. Let's bring Monica Williams on. And it's amazing, when you have a dream and you realize that, wow, other people share this dream. And so I think as we speak about this formation of the section, I think I want to encourage our listeners out there to remember that, when you have a dream, don't be surprised to know that other people have been dreaming it too. And so part of your role as a person, as a community member, is to speak out that dream. And you'll be amazed the kind of people who join you on that dream.
One of the things I say, when the dream is big, the facts don't matter. And also another thing I say, dreams don't have an expiry date.
Very well
so, said. And Helen, you're a whole online host dream, because you set up for a beautiful segue about the shortage of Black psychologists. Let's talk about this. Who would like to start?
I have been working for a long time. Like basically end of 99, I started my career. So that's a long time. And up until the time that this group got formed, I think I'd probably met 3 or 4 Black psychologists at all, ever, over the years.
Wow.
And Kafui and I, yes, we met 20-something years ago, but for a long time, she was in BC, so we had lost touch. I didn't even know that she had studied psychology.
Oh, gosh.
until she reconnected, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So this shortage thing, it's real. I know that when I was studying, I thought, well, okay, maybe I'm the only one in my program, but surely at every other university, there's probably at least one, maybe two other Black grad students, or even racialized. But as the years went by, and I still wasn't meeting anywhere, I realized, wait a second, I'm reasonably connected, I'm reasonably outgoing. So surely by now, if they existed, I would be able to find some.
Sure.
And now in this section in the CPA, we had about 90 members at the end of the year. But of those 90 members, most of them were allies.
Wow.
So one of the things that the other group, the BIR group, is going to be doing is trying to get an estimate of how many Black people are there in Canada who have a master's or PhD in psychology. Behind closed doors, I might guess there's probably less than 50. Publicly, I might say, oh, maybe there's 100, 150. But even if it's 150 in a country of 35 million, it's basically zero. So we have a big problem.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like to add to what Helen said. Helen has been in the field for a very long time, and Dr. Vibe. The reason you can't call me Dr. Kafui Sawyer is because I am not a psychologist. I am a psychotherapist, and so in psychotherapy, we're able to treat, we're able to assess, but we're not able to do the diagnosis part of our work because it's not regulated in Ontario for us to be called psychologists, and that's fine. So I want to be careful that I'm speaking to Ontario in that regard, because in other provinces that's not the case. Like in Alberta, some of my colleagues that I graduated with are actually practicing psychologists, and then the same goes for, I think, Nova Scotia as well. You don't have to have a PhD to be a psychologist. But in Ontario, that's the case. And Ontario has the most, I should say, racially diverse population in Canada. And so, when we think about Canada being an ethno-culturally diverse country that is home to over 250 ethnic origins, according to Statistics Canada, that means that we have, quite a number of visible minorities. So if I can get my stats right, I think it's about 22.3% of Canadians identify as a visible minority, and 4.9% identify as Indigenous peoples. So First Nations, the Métis, and Inuit people. I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that who is identifying as a psychologist and providing services for these people. So we don't have that going for us as Black people, especially where psychologists are the ones who are making the diagnosis. So, if someone came to me and is looking at figuring out, what's going on with your mental health, I need to pass them on to a psychologist for a diagnosis if they are really looking for something to show on paper, or to also maybe speak to their employer that they need to make accommodations for this, accommodations for that. And they need a psychologist to be able to confirm this diagnosis. So our Black people are usually going to white psychologists to actually give them a confirmatory diagnosis that may be connected to racism, that may be connected to trauma in the workplace, and other anxiety issues, right? And so when you think about it, do you think that you're going to have an ongoing system that actually is going to work in the best interest of Black people who have so much trauma in their lives? Like the amount of intergenerational trauma we carry on,
It's
from
huge.
It's huge.
It's huge.
It's so huge.
Go ahead.
So I think the disparities in our healthcare system when it comes to care, mental health care, speaks to the struggle we have. in having a diverse group of professional psychologists in Canada to help meet our needs as Black people.
Helen and Kafui, you are coming back. You just know that already. You are coming back because just in the last few minutes, that's a whole conversation in itself. I will share with you, especially over the last 2 years, I'm beginning to wonder what's a bigger challenge for many melanated people, racism or trauma. Because the trauma piece, and I think especially intergenerational and also Black family trauma. That's a whole conversation piece.
And when you talk about Black families,
yep,
I think about families that are in crisis during a divorce or a separation, and Children's Aid and other people start to get involved.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes there are diagnoses and things that are happening. And, there are very few psychologists who can weigh in.
Yep.
And sometimes things are bungled. Yep. And you can't do a do-over for a child's childhood when things happen and whoever is involved don't know what they're getting into. They may misread the situation because they don't understand the impact of racism. They don't understand the impact of trauma, racial trauma.
I'm going to ask if you both can give us some bonus time, because we're supposed to end this now, because we still have to talk about Dr. Helen's upcoming book, and also the audience has questions.
Okay.
So I'll let you ladies decide. Do we want to talk about your book and then we get to the questions, Helen, or how do you want to?
I can talk a little bit about my book, and if you can share a link to the trailer, that would be great.
Okay, I will actually do that, and also I'm going to go one better. I'm actually going to show the site, so people have a visible look. Catch off guard on, yes, we're going to show some of it.
Okay,
there we go. So we're going to bring that up in just a second here, and let me just. So let's tell us about this wonderful book.
Well, the gist of it is that some years ago, when I was feeling restless and feeling like I could do more work-wise, I was looking for an executive coach. I was looking for some support to figure out what to do next. And I found somebody who was pretty good, but he was a white dude. So yes, he understood certain parts of my life, but not everything. So basically, this book kind of consolidates a lot of information that I've come to know, that I've studied, that I've lived, either personally or through the experiences of my clients. And I talk about the 10 biggest setbacks or obstacles or barriers that a lot of people face in their careers. And most of these are universal, but some of them hit harder for racialized people. So underemployment is definitely something that's harder for racialized people. Anyone can deal with the imposter syndrome, feeling like despite the fact that you're accomplished and you're successful, that maybe you don't quite belong or that things are going to fall apart. I wouldn't say that bullying or harassment are only Black people problems, but certainly if you add discrimination, then that's more complicated for us. So there's basically 10 chapters that cover 10 big barriers that people are dealing with. And they're the kinds of things that don't really lend themselves to just doing a quick online search. They're the kinds of things that need a bit more depth, a bit more nuance. And for folks who don't want to or can't find their own private coach, this is a good first step. So thanks for sharing the link, and maybe we can go to some of the questions.
I will do that. I'm also just let me just go to the right link for the book. Here we are. Okay, just keep everybody. Here is the correct link for the book. You can pre-order, by the way.
Yes.
So definitely, this is a link for this upcoming. Maybe if Helen has some time, she can come on. We can go into a deeper dive about the book in and around when it comes. Oh, see, got the thumbs up. Don't worry, I'm not leaving you out either. Miss
Okay.
Black X, because you're not getting away. You're gonna be back too. You got fire going on. I love it. I love it. So we're gonna do that. So we got some questions from the family. So let's start taking a look at first question here, and I think we've maybe already talked about, but Fane says, hello, everyone. Thank you for addressing that sensitive topic. How can we address the lack of representation and lack of culturally competent professionals in psychology fields that might make it difficult for some Black people to seek help? I think you may have touched on that, but if you want, you can go a little bit deeper.
Well, certainly one of the things we're trying to do with the Black Psychology section is take a closer look at things like accreditation, and taking a closer look at the composition of professors who are teaching psychology. Because if we don't have diversity among professors, it's going to be a very limited perspective that students are getting, which makes it hard for them to become culturally competent professionals. So we have a long list of things we're trying to accomplish, but we got to start somewhere.
Yeah, just start. Start. Kevin has this question here. How does Canada compare to American initiatives for racially diversity in the workplace?
I think we're much further behind than in the United States. And what's terrific is that next month, Kafui, is it the 27th of February?
Yes, the 27th of February.
We're having the CEO of the American Psychological Association, who's a Black man. He's coming to be our guest for 2 hours to share some lessons and share some insights and some tactics to help us, understand what they've already gone through and how they've accomplished it. Because certainly they have better representation. I know that one of the things that they did was they required universities to have a certain number of Black professionals, Black professors in each department in order for them to be accredited. And likewise, they needed a certain number of Black students in programs. Otherwise, they didn't get to hold on to their accreditation. So that's something that we can do in Canada if we can, inspire that will or compel things to be done differently. Kafui, I'm sure you have some extra things to add to that piece.
Yeah, I think to add to that, I think the Americans have been ahead of the game because they also collect race-based data. And so collecting race-based data strengthens your credibility to address the issues, and also provides opportunities for grants to do more accountability research on the problems that I should say most Black people, Indigenous people, and racialized people are facing in psychology. And that's a problem here in Canada, that we've not collected race-based data on how many psychologists we have. And so if you don't have a data, it's very hard to prove anything is scientific. So I think the Americans have been ahead of the game because they have been quite upfront about knowing who is in the profession.
Yeah. Numbers don't lie.
No.
Numbers don't lie. So both of the ladies here mentioned this event that's coming up. This is on the website, and the gentleman they were speaking about is Dr. Arthur C. Evans, CEO of the American Psychological Association. So if you go to the website, and what I will do is give you the website address again, you can join them virtually on February 27th. So if you go to this website here, you'll get all that information that they just shared about the event they're having. And even if you're not into psychology, go, because it impacts each one of us every day. One of my associates a long time ago, she said, Dr. Vibe, she said, every Black person needs a psychologist. And the more I journey, the more I agree with that.
Dr. Vibe, there's this postcard that I sometimes reflect on and share during certain workshops that I'm giving. And it's a picture of a boat on a beautiful body of water, calm water, beautiful photograph. And the caption says, boats don't sink because of the water around them. They sink because of the water that gets in them.
Yes.
And that's what's happening to us. I mean, we're all living and marinating in racism. But it's what hurts us and gets into us that is, it's tearing us up.
What gets in the boat? What is in your boat?
What
is in your boat? Absolutely. Absolutely. So Kafui has also become fashion statement because Sir Adam has asked, I love the t-shirt. Where'd you get it from?
You know what? We have a friend. Her company is called SDH Toronto. Dr. Vibe, you know of her as well, Sandra.
Yes.
She makes clothing that lets us live our values. There's Black excellence, there's Black intelligence. This one says Black psychology. And she made these hoodies for our section.
Nice.
So if you can share her link in the chat, there's all kinds of clothing.
I'll see if I can find it. I'm multi-purposing here. I'm hosting, producing, doing all this stuff. So do the best I can with what I got. Sarah Youngo, who's back on a bi-weekly basis on Black Canada Talking, saying, how do initiatives like the Black Federal Public Servants Class Action Suit affect DEI work? And she's saying, awesome discussion. So proud of our Dr. Helen.
Thank you. Well, I find that, I'm not part of the public service, but I certainly work with some public servants. And, we've had the threat of this class action lawsuit going for what seems like years, easily 2 or 3 years. And so I think that that's applying a little bit of pressure to maybe encourage certain organizations to figure out, well, what can we do to address some of the issues that are in the class action lawsuit? Because one of the big pieces is the Black mental health. Mm-hmm. And the other big piece is career progression. I can't say that I know very much about what's happening in terms of Black mental health, that file in the public service, if there even is a file, but certainly I've seen more evidence of organizations, departments creating initiatives that help Black public servants get ahead more readily. So certainly there was a call to action from the clerk a couple of years ago, encouraging more sponsorship, encouraging more appointments. So, there's been some mixed results, but at least it's creating some pressure. What do you think? I'm sure you have a different perspective. You hear different things than I hear.
So part of my work is working with the government's EAP program, as well as the issues surrounding their workplace concerns. And so I think, people are actually speaking up and voicing their concerns around, what's not going well for them as Black people in the organization. And they're stepping up and speaking up and connecting, they're calling their EAP service providers and asking to see a Black therapist, and they're advocating for themselves in the sense that, if this is happening in the background within the federal government of Canada, they want to speak to people who understand what they're experiencing. So I get to see the advocacy and reaching out for mental health care within service providers who look like them.
Nice.
And I have seen certain lists of Black and racialized mental health providers circulating in the public service, so that even if people reach out to the EAP and they can't find somebody, odds are they can find somebody else or find a directory where it makes it easier to find people. I know that one of the people who kind of said hello in the chat, Alice, she's a founder of a nonprofit that provides that kind of access. They have a directory, Black Mental Health Canada.
Yes.
So
Alice, I'd love to get a member from your organization. I've been asking periodically 1 or 2 people, haven't heard back from them. So I'm call to action, Alice, get in touch with Dr. Vibe.
I'll send her an email with your details.
Please do. And you talked about EAP. It's part 1. Come the other part after. But just to encourage people, if they have access to these services as part of their EAP, please take advantage of them.
That's right.
Please.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I think about how lovely it is when you can go for a massage, you can go for physio if something's hurting you. So why don't we get the nice things, right? I mean, it's not just white folks who should be benefiting from nice things and nice services. I mean,
we are worthy. We are worthy.
A big happy smile because you feel great.
Yeah, we are worthy.
Absolutely.
You have value. Please take. It makes me shake my head when I know people who work in corporations, and I say, "So, do you do massages?" Nah. Do you have money set aside for it? Yeah. Okay. You're not taking advantage of it. That's wellness. You know, can you go to see a therapist? Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's going, wow.
Yeah,
And
I think Dr. Vibe, one of the things, and as well as Helen, I think one of the things is, you know, as racialized people, we've not been taught to rest, right? We don't have that philosophy about resting. There's that philosophy about fighting and proving yourself and going here and, you know, and not learning to stop. And so, you know, some people like me who look like me don't think about EAP as a self-care. They don't think about going for that massage as a self-care. But these are things that actually are so important for you to function well in society. You have to take care of the body. You have to take care of the mind. If the body is not rested, the mind will not rest.
You know what? Taking a break is part of the journey. And I always like to use this analogy that there's like you have race car races like the Indianapolis 500. Great example. It's the most famous race in the world, car race. I always like to say to people, how many drivers finish on one tank of gas? They have to go in periodically and get a pit stop, refuel, change their tires, make sure they check. And it isn't the driver that does all of that. There's a group of people that make sure that the driver's okay.
I love that analogy. That is beautiful.
You know, and another interesting, there's an associate of mine in California. He has a group of guys that he calls his board of directors. So every 2 months, and I'm on it, every 2 months, he'll set aside an hour meeting and just share with us what's going on with him personally and professionally and asking our feedback.
And the truth is that successful people, that's what they do.
Yeah.
Right? Most people who have survived the pandemic more or less intact, they probably have their board of directors. And it probably includes, if they're religious, it includes a faith healer of some sort. It probably includes a therapist. It probably includes a mentor or a coach, plus some family and friends.
It's interesting. I was with one of my long-term mentors this morning, and he has, for the last 30 years, once a month, he has a get-together with his closest associate, and they call it vault conversations.
Okay.
Because what's said there stays in the vault. No one else. I loved that analogy, vault conversations. I thought that was fantastic. So, Helen, you've got pushed because you see what Alice said? I'll be in touch.
Yes.
All right. So as we start winding the conversation down, there is a last conversation piece here. Jennifer's saying, what's an action item that we can leave with today to implement in our workplaces, daily lives, to better the lives of Black and other racialized people? Wow. What a non-loaded question.
Helen, you want to go for that?
Well, I think one thing that keeps coming up every time there's an incident that's dramatic and actually traumatic is to not expect Black people to be the ones who educate everybody on why the thing is problematic. And of course, on Friday night, another video is released. I have not
I
watched
didn't
it.
watch it.
I've watched videos of that young man skateboarding, but I won't watch the other videos.
No.
So, not expecting Black people to be taking on all of that extra burden, especially with Black History Month coming.
Kafui.
I think as much as we are passionate about our work, and as much as we have to coexist with other people in our workplaces, we need to pay attention to the need for self-care. We really do. And if we need to schedule that, let's schedule that, because it's in the self-care that you refuel the tank, like you mentioned. And so if you keep going and going and going all the time, that is quite damaging for the body as well. The body is going to have to need some rest. And so I think that as we are passionate with our work and trying to bring some more awareness and knowledge and advocacy in our work and standing up for what we believe, I think we need to balance that with some self-care.
I'm not at the level of expertise as my two esteemed friends are today. The only thing the first thing that comes to my mind is, don't be afraid to ask for help.
That's it. We're all humans. We're not robots. We're not meant to work constantly. We're supposed to have feelings because we're humans.
Yeah. I help a lot of men, and I say, look, get your ego out of the way and ask for help. Asking for help is strength, not weakness.
That's right.
So both of you, I knew you were going to hit it out of the park. So thank you so much for taking the time today. I appreciate both of you.
Thank you for
Doc, if
having
you want to
us.
get in, and I'm counting on you to be back.
All right, I'll come back when my book's available.
No problem.
I mean, it's available now for pre-order, but nobody can read it yet.
There you go. And Jennifer says, excellent answers. Thank you so much. So also, if you want to get in touch with Dr. Helen, that's her coaching consulting website. And then, of course, there's the book website.
Thank you.
Kafui, do you mind if I give out your email address?
Sure. That's fine.
Well, the way I'm raised, I ask. All right. And that is Kafui's email address. And the organization that they're a part of is there, the Black Psychologists section of the Canadian Psychological Association. Ladies, thank you so much. I'd like to wish you blessings on what you have done, what you are doing, and what you will be doing. And I also want to say, remember to give yourselves grace and don't just manage your time, manage your energy.
Love that.
We will talk again. Thank you so much for taking the time, and thanks for making all of us better. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Hey, I make sure I give myself grace, and I get my 7-8 hours of sleep a night. Believe me.
Nice.
You got it.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right, family. Thank you so much. Great conversation today. Both of them doing fantastic stuff. So appreciate it. Fantastic. So a few things before we shut it down for this conversation today. Let's go with this. If you want to learn about how to launch a podcast, I am working with an organization called Innovation Guelph. It's a collaboration, and it's a 3-part series webinar. The first part is already done, but if you're watching this before February 16th, you can get to the next two. Next one's on February 2nd, and then next one's on February 16th. It's a 3-part series on how to launch a podcast, highly interactive, and enjoy. If you want to do it, be great. A number of people from the Dr. Vibe family have come and give us support and ask questions. And Innovation Guelph has said it's been one of the most enjoyable and interactive series they've ever collaborated with someone with. So Good stuff. Also, there are some new people here. If you're comfortable, subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show, especially on YouTube. If you subscribe on YouTube, not only subscribe, but hit the notification button, and you'll get notified of upcoming conversations. And you also like the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook, but wherever you're watching it, subscribe. So that is it for today. One other thing I just want to pull up. Yes. If you want to get in touch with me, there's my website address, the drvibeshow.com. Email address, dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, The Dr. Vibe Show. Twitter, at drvibeshow. And then Instagram, at the drvibeshow. Also, too, if you'd like to promote your business or service on the show, contact me at my email address, dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. And if you're watching this live or watching the replay, you can watch replays of of any of my shows, but Black Canada Talking too, on the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and my website, the drvibeshow.com. So let's finish off with this. That's the wrong thing. Put that up. That is there. Okay, we got it all. So this is how I finish off. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get smaller, get stronger. Block assumptions, then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. And I heard something today. Another thing I heard today that I just want to share with everybody. One of my mentors said, next time before you speak, ask yourself these 3 questions. Is it true? Is it necessary? And is it kind? So I just wanted to leave off with that. So thank you so much. Appreciate everything that all of you are doing in regards to supporting the Dr. Vibe Show. God bless. Peace and well. Keep the faith and walk good. And we'll see you soon. Yeah.